everybody. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how to apply the jab, right? So if you've been following along now, you know we've been talking about the theory of different techniques and how to practice them versus the difference in applying them in actual combat. If this is your first time tuning in, right, this may be something different than you've ever seen before. I guarantee you there's not a lot of people talking about the jab in this manner. It is very effective. There are some folks out there that are teaching it this way. And if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see I posted a video a few weeks ago kind of leading up to what we're going to do today. In that video, it shows some of the 10 best boxers of all times and what they do for their jab. So I encourage you to take a look at this video and then go back and look at our Facebook page and kind of compare what we're doing and what was effective to those boxers of that time. And you'll see a few of them doing it today. So first and foremost, your jab, it's your distance holder, distance creator, right? I'm using this to keep my opponent at a distance. Keeping that distance is going to give me the time I need to react if something is coming at me. The other thing that it's going to do is it's going to allow me to see what's coming, essentially, right? So if my opponent's starting to get too close, your peripheral vision starts to narrow down and it's harder to see different attacks coming at you. So if I could keep this distance, right, and we talked about this in the distance video, I'm going to be able to see things coming and react better. And I utilize my jab for that. So part of it is your footwork, right? We're coming right back to our foundation. But then it's throwing this jab out there to keep someone from rushing in on you. We're giving them something to worry about. And we're letting them know, right? Again, back to our principles of holding our angle. I'm ready to fire. So if my opponent wants to rush in on me, this jab is waiting for them, right? And it lets them know you can't just walk in on me without some kind of consequence. So that's the thing. That's the first thing, right? It's our distance creator. The other thing is it's our probe. We are probing. If we're squaring off with someone, we're standing here and we're moving around, they're moving with us. It's hard to just rush in and attack. It's risky. And I'll talk about some of those elements in a bit. But for the most part, I'm throwing my jab out there because I want to see what are they going to do? How are they going to react? Do I have a very aggressive opponent who's going to rush in after me when I do throw that jab? Do I have someone that's going to cover up? And are their feet staying planted at that time? Do they parry? Do they slip? Right? Are they reaching for it? There's different, if you catch a jab, right? You want to keep your elbow in if you catch a jab, right? There's a lot of people that will reach out and just flicking this out there, I'm throwing it, mind you, and I want to see what's going to happen. If I have someone that reaches out, I'm just going to fake one and then step in and feed them a nice shot. So those are a few of the key elements I would say as far as the strategy of jab. You're using distance, you're using it to create and maintain distance, you're probing with it. The other part of the jab is you're using it to set up other attacks. And this is where it becomes very potent and valuable in your combat. So if you think about it like this, if I want to set up this rear hand and I'm throwing my jab, number one, to throw it from this angle here, if my opponent is right in front of me, this cross, it's way too far. We do not do that. I do not teach my students to throw their rear hand from way back here. Look at it this way. If I throw this jab out here, my opponent's right here. It's too far away. So what do? We walk it down. Get that rear hand closer. Cut the angle off. But if my opponent is standing right here, I'm going to walk it down and get my rear hand closer. It might be a hook, could be an uppercut, whatever it is. And I'm going to get off the line of attack while I'm doing it. I don't want to throw the punch and stay right here out in the middle. Which leads us to the next concept. A lot of things that I see out there. Number one, when some are taught to throw the jab to step in, right? Combatively, we do not apply the jab this way, and I'll explain why. But a lot of folks are taught to step in. The problem with this, my weight is on my front foot now. Yes, I'm getting some extra reach, but where's my reach ultimately going? It's going in a straight line, right? I can't change directions. So if I throw this jab and I step in, boom, I'm committed, okay? And we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna show you why in a minute, but that's it. I don't wanna stand, this is not good, right? The other thing that we get a lot of, people when they throw it, they'll lean in, try to make up that distance, right? So they're not bringing their foot with them, which is a little bit better, but then they're leaning in as well, right? This sets my body weight over my leg. I have to shift back in order to move. Another thing that we see a lot is when they throw this jab, boom, they come right back. Boom, straight line. And you'll see a lot of this all over different videos. Or they'll start walking down straight, back and straight, okay? If I throw my jab straight and come back and my opponent blocks, as I'm coming back, this is essentially creating a gap in space for my opponent to walk down on me as well, right? So I don't want to create this distance and opening and then step back into it and receive what's coming. Conversely, if I have an opponent who is savvy and they're going to angle off, so when I throw this jab and they step off to the side, what am I doing at that point? I'm coming back while they're stepping down on me. And that's where we're going with this. So when we throw our jab, I'm not coming in on it, okay? I am stepping off, circling, right? We talked about this a little bit on the circle video. On practicing our jab, circling with it. So I'm keeping my opponent at the end of my fist and I'm walking down on him. If my opponent decides to rush me and shoot forward, I'm stepping off as I'm moving anyways and punching. So I'm constantly changing my angle and I'm always a moving target. I do not want to be in front of my opponent's sights while they start throwing punches and start trading jab for jab. No, I'm just going to jab off the line, okay? The other thing is when we do throw this, it needs to be straight. Elbow down, it shoots straight out and comes right back. So the only thing our opponent sees is either this jab in their face or me with my hands up. Shoots out. I'm keeping my feet under me, so if I do need to make an adjustment, my feet are there to do so, right? If I need to angle off, if I need to hop back, hop over. So these are some of the different elements that we start talking about when we're talking about applying the jab. Now getting into the mechanics of applying the jab, if you remember at a beginning level, we're learning our body mechanics, how to properly generate power from our hips while actually throwing our punch with good form. But when we're in a combative situation, we need to abbreviate everything. You have split seconds to react and you don't even have time to think. So when we throw our jab combatively, and again, this is why we don't teach this in the beginning because it's very difficult to translate to someone who's just learning how to generate power from their hips and not their shoulders, right? But once you have this, this is where it comes into play. My jab starts from my back foot. That push. This is where the power comes from. And when I throw my jab, I'm not stepping in, I'm just half step off, right? I'm circling around my opponent. So that's my step, and that's all you need, right? We talk about half steps. I just need a little, just get off the line of attack just a little bit. it's bringing this hand closer and it's getting me further away from my opponent's hand because I'm controlling the angle. It forces my opponent to move their feet to face me. If your opponent starts turning, look at this. If I start shifting here and my opponent just turns his body to face me, look where I'm at here, right? So we're forcing our opponent to move their feet. That's where my power is coming from. Now it goes from the back foot to your hip, and it's just a small hip movement. That's where the power comes from. That hip puts my elbow in motion. And then just same thing as the punch comes out, straight line, turn your wrist on impact. Now when we were talking about this at a beginner level and practicing it, we were pivoting. Combatively, you don't need to pivot as much. You don't need to move your hip as much. So since we're not moving our hip much, we're not pivoting our foot much. See that? So when we throw this, nice and easy, half steps, and it shoots straight out. What we don't want this elbow popping out. We don't want to start turning to a back fist. There's no power here. The angle is off. You're not creating distance. I need to push it out, shoot it out. So that's the mechanics of it. Starts from the ground, push off with your foot, half step circling, put your hip into it, and that shoots your elbow out. All right, so we're going to put this into practice a bit on the bag. Now the first thing is when I throw this, I'm always holding my form, right? What does that mean? That means that if this is how I throw my jab, this is how I throw it every time. If I can't reach, I'm still going to throw it out. I'm not going to paw out there and try to touch my opponent's hand. This leaves my weapon useless at this point. If I'm going to throw it, I'm going to throw it out there. If I can't reach, I'm not going to lean forward and compromise my form. I'm not going to step forward with my foot and compromise my ability to move. I'm going to move my entire structure into my opponent. Okay? You have to bring the whole thing with you. Now when we're throwing this, I'm just stepping down. See how I circle? Keeping my opponent at the edge. Now remember when we were talking, if we have an opponent that likes to cover up and their feet freeze, when I throw this, 1, 2, look where this hand is, right? And this is what we're using our jab to set up those different types of strikes. Same thing, even if you have an opponent, if they're going to throw punches and turn and face you, let me stand this way. If they're going to throw punches at you, so if I'm standing here and I'm attacking, as they're throwing punches and I'm angling off with my jab, if they don't move their feet, they end up getting stuck here. And this is, now you're ready just to step in on them. And we'll talk more when we talk about what happens when you get off of the line and you come in for an attack. But my whole strategy when I'm throwing my jab is I'm keeping my opponent at the end of it. I'm looking for openings and I'm getting off of their line of attack. I do not want them to be in this stance and to be able to attack me. So I want to shift off the line and attack, or I'm going to shift off this way and then step down. So when we're practicing this, we just practice circling with it. I can go to my left, right? So essentially I'm going away from my opponent's cross if I'm going to my left. But what I will tell you is a lot of strikers, fighters, have trouble circling to their right. If you can circle to your opponent's right, if I have somebody circling this way on me, what happens is people have a hard time pushing off of their front foot to face and follow. So what they start doing is leading with this back foot. And then you end up squaring them up. So as we're coming around, going this way, I could come back this way. Sometimes I'll step down and step right back and get them to step out. So as we're practicing, we just start moving around. Right? Change your angles. I could come out of range a little bit, step back down, and you just get used to throwing it out, putting some power behind it. Just moving around. My hand is up. I'm constantly shifting and moving. When I throw my jab, I am no longer staying in the same place that I was when my jab started going. So if I throw this and step back, he's going to hit me. If I throw it and then try to move, there's still that split second of the punch coming back, I'm going to get hit. I am moving and firing at the same time. And so from here, you become very difficult to hit and very difficult to get away from. I'm keeping my rifle on my opponent at all times, so if he shifts over, I'm following. And this jab is ready to fire.